The small Earthship drifted slowly into the alien spaceport. It looked like a toy next to the massive alien vessels around it. Inside the ship, a young human named David sat in his pilot seat, wide-eyed and nervous. He had never been to another planet before, and now he was here on Karen 5, the royal planet of the Zireen Empire. David wasn't a soldier, a hero, or a famous explorer. He was just a translator, hired for a simple job. He was supposed to help with communication during a grand alien wedding between two noble houses. All he had to do was smile, speak politely, and stay out of trouble. But nothing was simple on Karen 5. The spaceport guards were tall, glowing creatures with hard eyes. They scanned him carefully, speaking in a deep language full of clicking sounds. David translated quickly, trying not to mess up. "You may proceed," the guard said finally. David let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The city around the port was made of crystal towers that shimmered in the light of the planet's 3 suns. Alien creatures floated in the air, moving like fish in water. The sky was purple. The air smelled like metal and flowers, and everything felt like a dream. He was taken to a huge palace. Inside, everything sparkled: floors of silver, walls of gold, and hanging lights that moved by themselves. Servants with 6 arms offered him glowing drinks and food that smelled like cinnamon and fire. David kept thinking, just a job. Just a translator. Don't get involved. But from the moment he entered the royal hall, eyes were on him. Alien nobles in bright robes whispered and pointed. He didn't understand why. He wasn't dressed like a royal, just a clean suit. He smiled awkwardly and kept moving. At the center of the hall stood the bride. She was tall and elegant, with long blue skin, eyes like stars, and hair that moved like smoke. She wore a silver crown and stood alone on a shining platform. David looked at her, then quickly looked away. A noble beside him leaned in and said, "That's Princess Villari." David nodded politely. "She's beautiful." The noble frowned. "You just said the binding words." David blinked. "The what?" "You said the words of acceptance, in her language, in her presence. During the wedding ceremony." David's stomach dropped. No, I didn't mean." But it was too late. The room fell silent. The priests turned. The bride looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. A voice echoed through the hall. "The princess has been chosen by the human. The binding is complete." David felt dizzy. People around him bowed. The music started again, louder this time. But something had changed. This wasn't just a celebration anymore, it was a mistake, turning into something dangerous. A loud boom shook the hall. Guards rushed in, shouting in their language. The windows cracked as explosions lit up the sky outside. "The Kreel rebels have launched an attack." Someone screamed. Panic spread. The nobles ran. The bride vanished behind a wall of guards. But one alien hand grabbed David's arm. "You have to run. They'll kill you." David's mind raced. Who? Why? The Kreel will never allow a human to bond with the royal bloodline. They think it's a curse. You need to leave now. Another blast rocked the palace. David ducked, heart pounding. All he wanted was a simple job. Now he was married to a princess, running from an alien war, and somehow, everyone thought it was his fault. He turned toward the glowing hallway, unsure where it led. But sure of one thing, his normal life was over, and this was just the beginning. David ran down the glowing hallway, his breath heavy and fast. The floor under his feet pulsed with light, like it was alive. Behind him, he could hear screams, laser blasts, and the deep roar of alien machines. The wedding was supposed to be peaceful. Now it was a war zone. He didn't even know where he was going. A young alien servant ran beside him, her face pale and scared. "This way, human," she said. "I know a secret tunnel." David followed without thinking. He had no map, no weapon, and no idea how to survive on this planet. He only had one goal: stay alive. They slipped through a small door behind a statue. Inside was a narrow tunnel made of stone. It was cold and quiet, a sharp contrast to the chaos above. "Why are they attacking?" David whispered. The servant looked at him, eyes full of fear. "The Kreel rebels hate the royal family. They've been waiting for a moment like this. But now that you're bonded to the princess—" "I didn't mean to bond with anyone," David interrupted. "It doesn't matter. The binding was real. It was done in front of witnesses. The princess is yours now in their eyes. You've changed everything." David leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. He was just a translator. This wasn't supposed to happen. Tunnel led them to a large metal door. The servant pressed a hidden panel, and the door slid open slowly. On the other side was a docking bay, empty, dark, but still intact. "Where is everyone?" David asked. "Fled, killed, or hiding. The rebels want the princess, and now they'll want you too." Before he could ask more, a loud sound echoed from behind. "Run!" The servant shoved David forward and slammed the door. He heard her scream as something heavy struck the metal. He wanted to turn back, help her, but he knew it was too late. He ran, through crates and shadows, past broken shuttles and flashing lights, until he found a small scout ship. It looked old, but alive. Its lights blinked slowly, as if it was waiting. David climbed inside and pressed random buttons. He didn't know how to fly alien tech, but he had no choice. The ship shuddered, then lifted as it rose above the palace. He saw the destruction below: fires, broken towers, alien bodies lying in the streets. It looked like a nightmare. Suddenly, a voice came through the ship's speaker. "You, human, do not run." David froze. The voice was deep, cold, and full of hate. "We know who you are. We saw the binding. You will give us the princess, or we will burn every city on this planet." David's hands shook. "I don't even know where she is." "No more lies. You are married now. Her blood is yours. Her fate is tied to you." The ship's radar lit up. 3 Kreel fighters were chasing him. David pushed the ship to full speed. Alarms screamed, lasers fired. The ship dodged left and right, but he could feel the hits. "I need help," he yelled. And then, just as he thought the ship would fall apart, a flash of light cut through the sky. Another ship, larger and stronger, appeared. Its weapons fired once, twice, and the Kreel ships exploded into dust. The radio crackled. A new voice spoke. "Stay calm, David. We've got you." "Who are you?" "We are the princess's guard. She sent us to find you. She says she trusts you." David closed his eyes, relief washing over him. But inside, he knew this wasn't over. He had become something he never wanted to be: part of an alien war, married to a princess, hunted by rebels. And now, the galaxy was watching. Asterisk. David sat in the back of the royal ship, breathing slowly, trying to calm his racing heart. His hands were shaking, and his clothes were torn from the escape. The guards around him stood silent and still, tall figures in silver armor with glowing blue eyes. None of them spoke to him. None of them even looked at him. He felt like a prisoner, even though they had just saved his life. The ship flew fast across the sky, toward a hidden mountain range. Below them, smoke rose from the cities. Fires burned where rebels had attacked. He could see flashes of light, explosions, battles, and falling towers. All because of him. He hadn't meant to say the binding words. He hadn't meant to marry an alien princess. But now it was real. The war had begun, and somehow he was right in the middle. The ship landed near a glowing cliff that opened like a mouth. They flew into a secret hangar carved into the rock. Inside, the walls were covered with strange alien symbols. Soldiers lined up, standing in perfect silence. David was taken to a quiet chamber with soft blue lights and smooth walls. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. He sat alone for hours, thinking, why didn't I just stay home? Then, the door opened. She walked in tall, graceful, her hair like flowing mist. It was Princess Valari. She wore a long dark robe now, her crown gone. Her face looked tired, but her eyes still glowed with power. David stood quickly. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean to, she raised a hand. I know. They stared at each other for a moment, not as a princess and a stranger, but as two people trapped in something too big for either of them. You didn't speak those words by accident, she said gently. Your mind may not know it, but your heart did. David shook his head. I don't even understand what's happening. Why are they so angry? Why do they care if I said some words? Valari walked closer, her voice calm but firm. Because the binding is ancient, sacred. It connects two souls. It creates a path that cannot be undone. But we're not even the same species. That doesn't matter. The binding is deeper than blood. It's fate. You spoke the words, David, and I accepted them. David sat down again, overwhelmed. So now what? We hide here forever? No, she said. We fight. He looked up at her. Fight who? The Kreel, she said. They've waited years for a chance to destroy my family. But now they fear you. You are an outsider unseen in the old prophecies. The one the stars did not predict. They fear. What that means, David laughed softly. I'm just a translator. I don't even know how to hold a weapon. Valari smiled faintly. Good. Then you will not waste time trying to kill. You'll find another way. Suddenly, an alarm rang. Out. A soldier rushed in and bowed. They found the sanctuary, my lady. Kreel ships are closing in. Valari turned to David. If they capture you, they will use your blood to end the royal line. They will break the binding. I won't let that happen. She touched a glowing panel on the wall. Part of the floor opened, revealing a small escape pod. You must go. Alone. I'll stay and hold them off. No, David said quickly. I'm not leaving you behind. You have no choice, she said. David stepped back, thinking hard. He could run again, save himself, go back to his simple life. But something inside him had changed. He looked into her eyes. We go together. Valari hesitated, then nodded. Then we go together. The two stepped into the pod, side by side. As the doors closed and the pod launched into the sky, the mountain behind them shook with explosions. Neither of them knew where they would land, but they knew one thing: they were no longer strangers, and the galaxy would soon learn what happened. When a human said the binding words ... the escape pod flew through dark clouds and fire-lit skies. Alarms beeped inside, and the pod shook every few seconds. David held tightly to the side rail while Valari sat calmly beside him, her eyes closed as if listening to something far away. Where are we going? David asked. The pod is programmed to land in the outer wilds, she said. No cities. No soldiers. Just forests and old ruins. The Kreel won't search there first. David glanced at the screen. It showed strange shapes below tall trees, glowing rivers, and strange moving dots. What lives there? Valari opened her eyes. Things we don't speak of. Before David could ask more, the pod hit the ground hard. Metal groaned. The lights flickered. Then everything went still. The hatch opened slowly, and cold air rushed in. David stepped out first. The forest around them looked alive. The trees were taller than buildings, with silver leaves that moved even without wind. Strange sounds echoed through the air, whispers, clicks, and soft music that came from nowhere. This place feels haunted. David muttered. "Vlar." I stepped out behind him. That's because it remembers. They walked carefully, staying low, moving through thick roots and glowing plants. David was used to city streets and small apartments. This place felt like another world. Suddenly, Something moved in the shadows. A tall shape stepped out covered in leaves and bark, with glowing red eyes. It held a long staff that sparked with blue light. David froze. What is that? Valari lowered her head. A watcher. The creature spoke in a slow, deep voice. You bring the bonded one here? To the forest of memory? Valari nodded. We seek shelter, just for a night. The watcher stared at David. He is not of this world. He smells like fire and war. He is my husband, she said simply. David swallowed hard. He didn't feel like a husband. He felt like a lost tourist. But he stayed quiet. The watcher moved aside. Then you may enter, but the forest will test him. They were taken to a small stone structure covered in vines. It looked ancient. Inside was warm and quiet. Strange light poured from the walls. As if the stone was alive, David sat on the floor, exhausted. Valari knelt beside him. Rest, I'll keep watch. David looked at her. You've been calm this whole time. Why? She gave him a small smile. Because I've trained for war my whole life. But this binding, I did not expect. David hesitated. You didn't want it, did you? Valari looked away. I didn't think I would feel anything, but when you spoke the words, something happened. The forest feels it. The watchers feel it. Even the Kreel fear it. David lay back and stared at the glowing ceiling. I'm still scared. Good, she said softly. That means you still care. That night, the forest whispered around them. David dreamed of stars falling, of fire swallowing cities, and of a hand reaching for his in the darkness. When he woke up, Valari was gone. He stood quickly and ran outside. The watcher blocked his path. She walks the trial, alone. What trial? The binding was never meant for a human. The forest must decide if it will accept you both. David's chest tightened. And if it doesn't? The watcher's eyes glowed brighter. Then she won't return. David didn't wait. He pushed past the watcher and ran into the forest, shouting her name. Trees closed around him. Strange visions filled the air. His home, his mother's voice, his childhood on Earth. All illusions. All distractions. But he kept moving. He would find her. Because something inside him had changed. He was no longer just a translator. He was the bonded one. And no forest, no war, and no ancient test would take her from him. David ran deeper into the glowing forest, calling Valari's name again and again. The silver trees whispered back, but not in words, only memories, illusions, and shadows. He saw flashes of his past, his home on Earth, his old school, the coffee shop where he worked. He even saw himself sitting alone, forgotten by the world. But he kept going. None of it was real. Valari. He shouted. No answer. Suddenly, the trees parted, and he stepped into a wide clearing filled with blue mist. In the center was a stone platform, and Valari stood on it, eyes closed, body frozen like a statue. Around her floated strange orbs of light. David rushed forward, but an invisible force stopped him. He slammed into it and fell back. A voice echoed through the air. She is being tested. David stood up. Let me help her. She must walk alone. If her soul breaks, she will fade. David looked at Valari. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled. She was struggling inside. He closed his eyes and touched the barrier. Then test me too. The forest went silent. You are human. You don't belong. David opened his eyes. But I'm still here. I didn't run. I could have escaped many times, but I stayed. I chose her. The light around the platform flickered. Then, slowly the barrier faded. David stepped forward, careful not to touch her. He sat beside her on the cold stone. If you can hear me, Valari, he whispered, you're not alone. You don't have to fight everything by yourself. We're a team now. A soft wind blew through the clearing. The orbs vanished. The mist lifted. Valari opened her eyes. She looked at David, confused at first, then clear. "You came into the trial?" "I couldn't just sit and wait," he said. Her eyes softened. "You passed the forest's test." "No," David said. "We passed." They stood up together. The trees around them bowed, and the Watcher stepped into the clearing. "You have been accepted," the Watcher said. "Now the forest gives you a gift, something only the bound may carry." From the earth rose a small crystal, glowing with white and gold light. Valari picked it up, and it pulsed in her hand. "This is a memory seed," the Watcher said. "It holds the truth of this world, and the power to change it." David looked at Valari. "What does that mean?" Valari's voice was steady. "It means we can show the galaxy what really happened. We can prove that the binding was true. That it wasn't a trick or a curse." David nodded slowly. "We can stop the war." Before the Watcher could speak again, the ground shook. A bright red light appeared in the sky. A Kreel ship. "They found us," Valari said. "We have to move now." David followed her back to the escape pod. The memory seed glowed in her hand like a small star. They lifted off just as lasers hit the trees below. The forest shielded them one last time before fading into the distance dot. As the ship broke through the clouds, David looked at Valari. "We can't run forever." "We won't," she said. "We go to the capital. It's time they heard the truth from both of us." And so they flew toward the heart of the Empire, two souls bound by accident, now joined by choice. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, they had a chance to end it. Asterisk, the royal capital of Karen 5 had become a fortress. The skies above were filled with warships, and the city streets below buzzed with soldiers and drones. Giant screens flashed alerts, warnings, and Kreel propaganda claiming the princess was missing and corrupted by a human dot. But now, the missing princess was returning. David and Valari landed the stolen scout ship in the shadows of an old temple near the city's edge. The temple had once been a place of peace, but now it was forgotten, covered in dust and silence. Inside, hidden beneath the ancient stones, was a secret path to the Royal Council Hall. They moved quickly. Valari wore a hooded cloak. David stayed close behind her, holding the memory seed tightly in his hand. It was warm, like it was alive, pulsing with power. "This plan," David whispered. "It's dangerous, right?" Valari gave a small smile. "Very, but it's the only way." They entered a dark corridor. At the end was a door made of glowing crystal. Valari placed her hand on it, and it opened slowly. Inside, the High Council was already in session. 12 elders stood in a circle, their long robes flowing, their eyes full of suspicion and pride. In the center was a glowing platform where royal truths were shared publicly, permanently, without edits or lies. A guard noticed them and stepped forward with a weapon. "Halt! You cannot be. Let her speak." A strong voice shouted that. It was General Arvin, Valari's old commander. His armor was scratched from battles, but his eyes were sharp. "She is the princess. You will listen." Valari stepped forward, pulling down her hood. Gasps filled the chamber. "You all know what happened," she said. "But you don't know the truth." She nodded to David. He placed the memory seed into the platform center. The crystal lit up. Images filled the air. David at the wedding, the accidental binding, the Kreel attack, the escape through fire, the forest trial, and finally, the glowing trees giving them the seed. Every word, every moment, the truth played for all to see. When the vision ended, silence filled the chamber. One elder broke it. "You expect us to believe this? This human didn't plan this." "He didn't," Valari said. "He saved me again, and again, not for power, not for war, but because he cared." Another elder stepped forward. "And now we are bound to a species that eats meat and lives in gravity huts?" Valari's voice grew cold. "You fear a human because he speaks plainly. You fear him because the stars didn't warn you about him. That's not wisdom, that's pride. David spoke next, voice shaking. I didn't ask for any of this. But I'm not walking away. I'm bonded to her, and I stand with her. If you want peace, we can build it. If you want war, I won't run. A long silence. Then General Arvin nodded. The truth has been shown. The princess spoke with honor. The humans stood with courage. I accept the binding. Slowly, other council members lowered their heads in agreement, but just as hope filled the room, a scream echoed from the hallway. Explosions shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. A guard ran in, bloody and afraid. The Kreel are here. They've broken the shield. Valari's eyes narrowed. They came to kill me before. The council could choose peace. General Arvin drew his sword. Then we fight. David reached for Valari's hand. We do this together. She looked at him and nodded, side by side. Outside the chamber, Kreel warriors stormed the hall. Their weapons crackled with dark energy. They didn't care about truth or memory, they came for blood. David raised his eyes to the glowing ceiling. He didn't know how the next minutes would end. But he knew one thing now. He wasn't just part of this story. He was ready to finish it. The Royal Council Hall shook with explosions. Kreel warriors burst through the grand doors, their black armor glowing with red energy. They roared like beasts, firing without mercy. General Arvin stood in front of the council with his sword raised. Protect the princess! Protect the bonded! Valari pulled David behind her, energy gathering in her hands. Stay close. If they separate us, the binding weakens. David didn't plan to move an inch. The chamber became a battlefield. Lasers flew through the air, guards shouted orders, and the Kreel kept pushing forward. But the council members didn't run. For the first time in generations, they stood as one. Some used ancient weapons. Others activated shields hidden in their robes. They were old, but not weak. David grabbed a fallen weapon. It was heavier than anything he'd ever held. He had never been trained for war, but right now, he didn't need training. He only needed courage. One Kreel soldier rushed toward him. Blade raised. David stepped aside at the last second, swung clumsily, and hit the soldier in the arm. The creature screamed and fell. David stood frozen for a second, shocked at what he had done. Vel, AR, I called out. David, behind you. He turned and blocked another strike, barely holding the weapon steady. Then Valori sent a blast of light that threw the attacker across the chamber. They fought side by side, never far from each other. The binding gave them strength. Their movements began to match his instinct, her skill. Then, the air grew colder. From the far end of the hall, a tall figure entered. His armor was darker than night, his face hidden under a mask made of bone. The Kreel warlord, Valari whispered. He raised one hand and all the other Kreel stopped moving. Silence fell. You, the warlord said, pointing at David. You ruined everything. A human married to royal blood. That future was never written. You should not exist. David stepped forward, heart pounding. Yet here I am. The warlord raised his hand again, and a blade of black fire formed in the air. He walked slowly toward them. Valari whispered, He is too strong. We can't beat him in battle. David looked down at the memory seed, still glowing on the floor. Then maybe we don't fight him. Maybe we show him. Valari's eyes widened. You ought to use the seed on him? It showed the truth before, David said. Let it show him too. As the warlord raised his blade, David stepped forward and slammed his palm onto the seed. Light burst through the room. The Kreel warlord was frozen mid-strike. Around him, memories filled the air. Valari's pain, David's struggle, their bonding, the forest, the sacrifice, the truth. Then something else appeared. A memory not from David. A memory from the warlord. He was young, afraid, watching his family burned during a royal purge. He had grown in war. hatred filling his heart, not because of truth, but because of lies. He stepped back, shaking. The black flame vanished. "No," he said softly. "This cannot be." Valari stood beside David. "The past was cruel, but you don't have to carry it anymore." The warlord dropped his weapon. He looked at his soldiers. "Stand down." The Kreel lowered their blades. Outside, the capital lights dimmed. The ships in the sky stopped firing. The war was over. Later, David stood on a balcony with Valari beside him. The stars above were peaceful now. "You never thought you'd end a war by accident, did you?" Valari teased. David smiled. "I just wanted to translate alien words, not become a royal husband." She laughed softly and took his hand. "And yet, you were exactly what this galaxy needed." The council declared peace. The binding was honored. And for the first time in generations, humans were welcomed among the stars, not as outsiders, but as part of something greater. David looked at Valari and whispered, "What happens now?" She smiled. "Now we build a new future, together." And above them, the stars watched in silence as the most unexpected love story in the galaxy became legend.